The instant I realized what had just occurred, my heart leapt into my throat. A strange combination of confusion, surprise, and an undeniable thrill washed over me. It had all seemed so ordinary at first, just another typical day. I was home alone, enjoying the rare peace and quiet, and decided to take a bath to relax. What I didn't know was that my son's friend, who had visited earlier, hadn't left yet. The afternoon was calm, almost serene, and the house felt still. The warm water filled the tub, and as I lowered myself into it, the stress of the day began to fade. Closing my eyes, I allowed myself to completely unwind. The water's heat was comforting, wrapping around me like a soft embrace. For a fleeting moment, I felt utterly at ease. But then something felt off. It was a subtle, uneasy sensation, as though I were being observed. I dismissed it at first, chalking it up to an overactive imagination. After all, I was alone. Or at least, I thought I was. Cautiously, I opened my eyes and looked around the bathroom. Everything seemed normal. The towels were neatly stacked, the shampoo bottle sat innocently on the shelf, and the steam from the bath curled lazily through the air. Yet the feeling persisted. A tingling awareness at the back of my neck, a quiet unease that refused to fade. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself it was all in my head, but the sensation wouldn't go away. It was like a shadow just out of reach, a presence I couldn't quite pinpoint. And then I saw it, a flicker of motion in the mirror's reflection, a quick flash of color at the edge of my vision. My breath hitched and my heart began to race. Slowly, I turned my head, scanning the room. Standing in the doorway was my son's friend, his eyes wide and fixed on me, a strange smile on his lips. In that instant, the bathroom's stillness seemed to grow oppressive. The warmth of the bathwater turned icy against my skin, and a shiver coursed through me. I had thought I was alone, but I wasn't. I leaned back, desperate to reclaim the calm I had felt moments ago, but the unease wouldn't fade. My senses were heightened, every sound amplified. Then, I heard it. A faint creak. The soft groan of a door moving. My pulse quickened as my gaze darted to the bathroom door, now sure I had closed it when I entered. A chilling realization watched over me. I wasn't alone. Someone had been watching me. My mind raced, trying to piece everything together. Was it my son? No, he wasn't home. Then it hit me. His friend. He must have stayed behind without me noticing. The thought made my breath hitch. He had been here the entire time and had seen me. A swirl of emotions engulfed me. Humiliation, anger, but also something unexpected. An undeniable excitement. The forbidden nature of the moment made my heart race in a way I hadn't experienced in years. I was flustered, yet a strange exhilaration bubbled beneath the surface. The memory of him standing in the doorway, watching me, sent a chill through me. My thoughts spiraled. What had he seen? What was he thinking? Was he curious? Intrigued? I couldn't stop my mind from wandering, trying to make sense of the situation. Should I confront him? Pretend it didn't happen? A flood of possibilities swirled through my head, each one more daring than the last. Then, an unsettling thought crept in, a thought that made my body flush with heat. Maybe this wasn't an accident. Maybe it was a chance, a break from the monotony, an opportunity to feel something new and unexpected. The water in the tub suddenly felt warmer, almost inviting. I closed my eyes, letting its heat envelop me as a storm of emotions churned inside. This moment was one I knew I wouldn't forget. Despite the discomfort, the thrill lingered, refusing to fade. I stayed still, unsure of my next move. Should I confront him or pretend nothing happened? The house had fallen eerily silent, and I wondered if he was still there, just outside the door, waiting. The tension was suffocating, but a part of me didn't want it to end. The wrongness of the situation only heightened its intensity. Slowly I rose from the bath, water cascading down my body. Wrapping a towel around myself, I stood there for a moment, staring at the door, my heart pounding. Taking a deep breath, I reached for the handle and pulled it open. There he was, at the end of the hallway, his eyes wide, caught in the act. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was heavy, charged with an unspoken tension. I couldn't find words, and neither could he. He looked embarrassed, yet there was something else in his gaze, something that mirrored what I was feeling. He had been watching me, but I couldn't summon anger. Instead, I felt an inexplicable pull toward him, a force I couldn't fully understand. The air between us seemed to crackle with energy, a mix of anticipation and danger. My heart hammered in my chest, echoing the unspoken question hanging between us. What now? He took a step forward, his gaze unwavering. His presence filled the hallway, an odd combination of awkwardness and intensity. I felt warmth spread through me, my skin tingling with a sensation I couldn't ignore. I didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was clear. This was a moment I would never forget. I stepped out of the bathroom, clutching the towel tightly, and moved toward him. He didn't budge, didn't speak, but his eyes stayed locked on mine, the intensity of the moment growing with each passing second. The air felt dense, charged with anticipation, as though something inevitable was about to unfold. Before I knew it, I was standing inches from him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. The conflict in his gaze was unmistakable, mirroring the battle within me. The hesitation mingled with desire. It was a perilous line we were treading, and we both understood the risk. My heart pounded loudly in my chest, each beat echoing stronger than the last. Then, in a moment that felt both inevitable and surreal, I leaned in, bridging the space between us. His breath hitched, and the surprise in his eyes was unmistakable. But he didn't pull back. Instead, he moved forward, meeting me halfway, and suddenly, we were locked in a kiss that was passionate and carried the weight of everything we had been holding inside. It was electric, the kind of kiss that steals your breath and leaves you craving more. My mind screamed at me that this was wrong, that we shouldn't be doing this, but my body didn't care. In that instant, nothing else mattered except the heat between us and the way his hand slid around my waist, pulling me closer. Time seemed to freeze as we lost ourselves in the moment. It was intoxicatingly forbidden, and I couldn't bring myself to stop. I knew we were crossing a boundary, but the thrill of it was too powerful to resist. Eventually, we broke apart, both of us breathing heavily, our faces flushed. For a moment, we simply stood there, staring at each other, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. I could see the same confusion in his expression that I felt. What had we done? I stepped back, my thoughts racing. This couldn't happen. It was wrong in so many ways. But as I looked at him, I knew this wasn't over. Something had changed between us, something we couldn't ignore. We had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. I turned and walked down the hallway, my heart still racing. I didn't glance back, but I could feel his eyes on me, the weight of what had just occurred hanging in the air. When I reached my bedroom, I closed the door behind me, the sound echoing through the still house. The world felt altered now, charged with a new energy, a mix of possibility and danger. The line between right and wrong had blurred, replaced by a whirlwind of emotion. I stood there trying to steady my breathing, my thoughts spinning. I knew I needed to think this through, to figure out what to do next. Yet, deep in my mind, a flicker of excitement lingered, a spark of something forbidden I couldn't quite push away. This was a moment I knew would change everything. Leaning back against the door, I struggled to process the storm of feelings swirling inside me. Guilt, exhilaration, confusion. But one thing was undeniable: I couldn't stop thinking about him. Over the following days, the memory of that moment stayed with me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him standing there, felt the intensity of his kiss, and relived the heat of that shared moment. It was wrong, but it consumed my thoughts. We didn't discuss it. He visited a few more times, and while we exchanged fleeting glances, neither of us addressed what had happened. The tension between us, however, was palpable. I knew it was only a matter of time before something happened again. And then it did. My son had gone out, leaving us alone in the house. The air between us was thick with anticipation, both of us aware of what was about to unfold, but neither willing to take the first step. We stood frozen, the silence between us a symphony of unspoken desires. The atmosphere crackled with energy, a heady mix of danger and excitement. I felt an irresistible pull toward him, a sense of inevitability I couldn't deny. I knew it was wrong, but I was powerless to stop it. The forbidden nature of what was happening drew me in, like a moth to a flame, and I knew I was ready to burn. Finally, he stepped closer, and without a word, we were in each other's arms again, lost in the moment's heat. This time, there was no hesitation, no second guessing. We both knew what we wanted, and neither of us was going to hold back. The kiss was even more intense than the first, filled with all the desire we had suppressed. It was reckless, but in that moment, I didn't care. Nothing else mattered. The rest of the day blurred by in a series of stolen kisses and whispered words. We couldn't keep our hands off each other, the tension between us finally finding its release. It was exhilarating, the kind of thrill that leaves you breathless and aching for more. But as the day drew to a close, reality began to creep back in. The stolen moments and forbidden passion felt like a dream, and as the dream faded, guilt gnawed at me. The wrongness of it all loomed over me, a constant reminder of the hurt it could cause. Still, the memory of his touch, the intensity of his gaze, they lingered. I couldn't deny the magnetic pull I felt toward him, even as I knew I was treading a dangerous path. The line between right and wrong had dissolved, leaving me lost in a confusing landscape of my own emotions. The thrill was too overpowering to resist, but deep down, I knew this was only the beginning of a dangerous game, a game I might not win. The guilt weighed heavily on me. What were we doing? We both understood the risks, yet, as I looked at him, I knew I couldn't stop. There was something between us now, something that wouldn't fade, no matter how hard we tried to suppress it. As the days turned into weeks, our secret affair continued. Each stolen moment grew more intense, more consuming. We knew it couldn't last forever, that eventually we would have to face reality. But for now, neither of us was ready to let go. For the moment, we lived in the thrill of the forbidden, savoring the excitement of each encounter. Yet deep down, I knew it couldn't continue indefinitely. Sooner or later, something would have to give. The question that haunted me was what would happen when it finally did.